Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. This is your Open Championship 2022 preview with myself, your host, George Elek, and Oddschecker's very own golf tipster, Niall Lyons. Niall, it's absolutely roasting where I am in London. I'm a bit jealous that it seems to be a bit overcast, a bit milder over with you in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, well, I'd swap you anytime.
I don't know.
It's certainly going to make for interesting conditions in the golf this week, but yeah, it's not the greatest here. I'm hoping it improves at some point. It's really not good when you're watching the weather forecast, listening to everyone complain about how hot it is across the water, like when we're just not getting it. Hopefully we'll get it in a few days, you never know.
Well, I can promise trying to go to sleep in this heat isn't the most enjoyable. But let's talk, the Open this weekend is back at St Andrews for the 150th Open Championship. One of the most famous venues, certainly. But in terms of the course itself and conditions, a pretty different test, if we can really even call it a test for this caliber of golfer.
Yeah, just what we're talking there about the weather, I think it's gonna play a huge part this week, having no wind. There's a little bit of wind forecast, but nothing that's gonna worry the golfers at all. Obviously, there was a bit of wind in Scotland last week, and it did cause a few problems in a couple of the rounds. But the heat, it's going to be so warm this week by the looks of it, and just St Andrews is easily tamed at the best of times, and even the Open Championship is, to be fair. You look at the last 7 Open Championships have been won in double figures under par, and a right few of them have been won in more than 15 under and better. You worry about St Andrews this week slightly, that that it'll make headlines, that it's so easy. And obviously it's always kind of a talking point when you come to St Andrews, that it's one of those courses that there's the pot bunkers are the only real defense if you've got no weather, and they are somewhat of a defense. That will play a huge part off the tee this week, trying to avoid those pot bunkers, because it's almost certainly a dropped shot whenever you enter. It's a penalty, just like hitting it in the water. All you can do is pitch out of them, so it's going to be important to avoid those this week. But in terms of score wise, of course, I would certainly expect it to reach towards 20 under par come the weekend, and whether that throws up a slightly more volatile result than normal remains to be seen.
Yeah, reading some quotes from Tiger Woods in the week, and he said, the key when he's played well at St Andrews, which is fairly regular when the Open Championships are, having won it twice, is basically positioning his ball in the right place, making sure that off the tee, you're hitting your tee shots into the right areas rather than just finding the fairways. In that sense, does course knowledge play quite a big part? Should we be looking, if you're looking at bigger price players, should you be looking at a Dunhill Links form? Should you be looking at who played well when the Open was last year in 2015? And kind of what data points, what model of player, what type of player do you think should go well this weekend?
Well, I think Tiger's definitely right in that a certain degree of strategy does come into it, because even if anybody was watching the coverage yesterday, Tim Barter talking with Rory McIlroy, McIlroy mentioned that in particular the second hole, there's plenty of room, or in the 17th, sorry, there's plenty of room right, that there's more room right than what you think. And on certain holes, not obviously maybe the par 5s or those drivable par 4s, but the par 4s that are certainly decent 2-shotter holes, the right side of the fairways going to be mighty important to come in to try and get anywhere close to the flag. And with the condition, with the course firming up over the next few days as well, with the heat, that'll become even more into it. But I wrote a trends piece a couple of weeks ago, and if you're looking somewhere to start, data point wise, I think Augusta's a really good pointer towards this. Even on the face of it, without looking at results, an ability to play the ball, well, that's St Andrews almost along the ground from around 50 yards and in, but from 70 yards in and pitching in and around the greens is going to be hugely important across the week. Getting up and down, getting close to giving yourself chances from those. If you are hitting those par fours to within 50 or 60 yards of the green, giving yourself the best chance to get a birdie thereafter. And you look back, and then when you look back at results, it's absolutely incredible when you look back at the last couple of Opens. 2015, obviously Zach Johnson won back in 2015. He won the Open. The other two members in the playoff, Oosthuizen, of course, runner-up at Augusta. Leishman has a 4th place finish. But out of the rest of the top 10, you've Spieth, Garcia, Willett, and Scott, all with wins at Augusta, and Rose and Brooks Koepka with runners-up. You go back to 2010, 4 of the top 6 have runners-up at Augusta. And you go back as far as 2005, you've actually 6 of the top 10 back in 2005 have actually won at Augusta. It's an unbelievable set of statistics and I don't think that's going to change. I think the test is that similar and that important from around the greens that those are the type of golfers that you're looking towards, and it's no surprise that the likes of even Cameron Smith and all are popular this week with a game that good from 70 yards and in. So that's certainly where I'm concentrated. Obviously, big hitters have always been a talking point at St Andrews down the years, and I can see a lot of the bombers being up there towards the end of the week, but I think key to their scoring will be how they perform on and around the greens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into we're going to go through your picks now, and then we'll talk about a couple of other players in the field that you haven't picked. And then you tweeted out last night that we were recording this and a couple of people sending questions, so we'll cover those off as well. But before we do get into the preview itself, as is always the case, going to point the viewer in the direction of the oddschecker app. Download the app now. There you can find the best prices. I mean, I do think with golf betting, if you're not using oddschecker, you're not doing it right, basically, because the prices vary so much and the place terms vary so much, and it is a bit of a puzzle to make sure you're kind of getting the best prices and best place terms possible for you, because it really does pay to do so. So do download the app now, and you can check the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and Niall's tips, not just for the majors, but every weekend ahead of the golf goes straight to the app as well. So do download the app now. Just quickly to run through the top end of the market, so people who are coming into this blind to kind of understand where we are. Rory McIlroy is the 10-1 favourite for the Open Championship. Zander Schoffler is the 16-1 second favourite. Rahm and Spieth both 18-1. Matt Fitzpatrick, fresh off his victory, his first major victory, is 20-1 alongside world number 1 Scotty Scheffler. Justin Thomas 22-1, Shane Lowry 25-1, Patrick Cantlay 28, Cam Smith 28, Zalatoris and last year's champion Colin Morikawa both 30-1, 35-1 Fleetwood, Hatton 40-1, Dustin Johnson 40-1, 50-1 bar those. And it is interesting always with the Open, where you're seeing Fitzpatrick and Scheffler the same price, you're seeing Lowry and Thomas the same price, Fleetwood and Johnson the same price. It just goes to show that that there aren't many events worldwide where you'd have those players aligned, but because it is the Open Championship and a bit of a different test, the market does sometimes flag up some interesting prices. But we're going to go straight to the top end of the market, and those who, and I think a fair few people do this, those who take a very firm interest in the majors, or maybe even just the Masters and the Open Championship, may have been surprised to hear me say that Zander Schoffler was the second favourite at 16-1, but he is the headline selection at 3 points each way. He was 18-1 when your column went live yesterday. The best place terms you're going to get for that 16-1 is with Betfred, who are 10 places. And fair to say that Zander Schoffler not only is probably playing the best golf in the world at the moment, but he's fresh off some as good a links form as you can possibly have, having won the Scottish Open last weekend.
Yeah, and for me that's key, because you look at the results here down the years in the Open Championship, like Spieth, when he won on his previous start. Stenson won the BMW a couple of starts previous to the Open. Mickelson won the week before winning the Open as well. He won the Scottish, but winning form is actually huge coming into this, and I don't think you can underestimate just how well Zander Schauffele is playing. He obviously won the Zurich Classic in April alongside Cantley, but recently won the Travellers, then won the Scottish, and actually in between them won the JP McManus Pro-Am, of course, which was a great field as well. The golf he's playing is just on a different level to everyone else at the top of the leaderboard now, and I think it's hard to ignore, especially around the 16-1 mark. You know, it's different if he came in here around 11 or 12-1, but given 16-1 and how he's playing it's just too hard to ignore for me. You know, he finished first in tee to green stats last week in Scotland, and I think it's 7 of the last 10 winners of the Open here played the Scottish the week before. So I think it is a big advantage to have played the Scottish. Just the experience that he got there over the weekend. Obviously, a bit of wind blew, caused some problems throughout the week, but there was plenty of greens missed over the last couple of days, and plenty of tight lies, and plenty of pressure up and downs, where I think that's going to be a crucial part of winning at St Andrews this week. And he gained a lot of experience in that department last week that I think could hold him in good stead. I think his time has come to win a major, possibly as well. You know, we talk about non-major winners being a big factor, and possibly a bigger factor than those who have gotten over the line in one. And Schauffele is probably the best golfer now in the world who has yet to win one. And everything aligns here at St Andrews. I can't see, you know, just given the golf he's playing, I think it's different if you turned up to a course where there was a lot of danger. Even say a tough US Open course, just like Brookline a couple of weeks ago, or a different Open Championship course like Birkdale, you know, where there's a shade more trouble. You've only really got to avoid the bunkers here at St Andrews, and you know, if your wedge game's all right, and if you hold a few putts, you know, you could easily be in contention. The signs there for Schauffele is just that he's driving the ball so well. His approach plays in good nick. He's putting well. His 3-putt avoidance, his stats are very good as well, which is a huge part of it. With the big greens here, there'll be plenty of golfers who will have long putts, and plenty who will be putting from off the green as well, from 40 or 50 yards also. So yeah, I just think it's too hard to ignore. And whilst McIlroy turns up around the 11-1 mark, doesn't have anywhere near the same kind of form that Schauffele has. He finished 14th at the US Open as well, which is a decent result. Previous to that, 18th at the Memorial, 13th at the PGA. That's 2 top 15s in the last 2 major championships, as well as the winning form coming in. I think 16-1 is very, very fair, and he's every right, I would say, to be alongside Rory McIlroy in the market.
With Schauffele, because he's playing so well, would you, as a backer and someone that wants to get with him, would you prefer that the conditions were a bit tougher? And do you worry at all that because birdies aren't going to be at a premium, the less of a test could throw up a more random result? Or are you still happy to think that even though we're likely to see birdies flying in everywhere, he'll still be able to make his class tell over the 4 days?
Yeah, I think a tougher test obviously does suit the better golfers, and a more volatile result is more possible, you know, when you're talking about 20 under par winning. But I think the test is almost not so similar to last week, but you know, it's straightforward here at St Andrews, bar the pot bunkers, and in particular the fairway bunkers, which you'll need to avoid. But Zander's one of the longest in the game as well. Hits the ball an absolute mile, so he'll be able to find plenty of them bunkers and take on whatever he needs to take on. And I just think that winning form counts for a lot. There's nobody coming in with anywhere near that kind of form. Fitzpatrick maybe is probably the best recent form alongside him, but the only negative for me might be a bit of fatigue. You know what I mean? He obviously won the Travellers, won the Scottish, and in between that won the JP Pro-Am down in the Durham Manor. So he's played a lot of golf and has played a lot of winning golf under pressure as well, which is the only slight negative, is that, you know, does that begin to weigh heavy on him at some point, you know, if he's in the final couple of groups on Saturday and Sunday. But I'm hopeful it doesn't. It's not the most sternest of tests around St Andrews, so his game off the tee and in particular his approach play is absolutely flying, and his putter's very hot as well. So I don't see any negatives, and I think you imagine the likes of Spieth coming in with that winning form, or McIlroy coming in. If McIlroy had won the Scottish and the Travellers, he'd be going off an 11-2 shot here, and if Spieth had won the Scottish or the Travellers, he'd be coming in single figures as well. I think the 16-1 about Schauffele is very fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Schoffler, a player who was criticised over the last few years for not being able to get over the line, but he certainly has left that well behind in the last few weeks as well. And I remember when he put up Zander on his Open debut back at Carnoustie in 2018, and he probably should have won that event. It was just fortunate that he'd also put up the winner in Molinari as well.
So 340 we got in the machine that week.
Unbelievable.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah, I certainly wasn't on at that price. Zander 16-1. Niall's headline selection. Next up, and my job here, Niall, is to play devil's advocate at some point. But you put up a player here whose quality is absolutely clear to anyone. But Justin Thomas, having won his second major this summer, his Open Championship form does read 53, miscut, 11th. And then 40th last year at Royal St George's. But he is the second pick, 2 points each way at 22-1. He is, still 22-1 around, if you want your place terms, your best place to go is Hills, who are 5th and 9 JT at 22-1.
Yeah, I think your analysis there of his open form is the worry this week, obviously. But he hasn't played an Open at St Andrews yet. And I think St Andrews will suit him down to the ground, and I think it's probably his best chance of winning an Open Championship. Somewhere where you've got tight lays from 50 or 60 yards in is going to be a huge part of the week, and there's not many better in the world than Justin Thomas at that. It was one of the main reasons why we backed him at the Masters, and of course he had a horrible first round, but rallied the rest of the week to get right up there towards the end. But obviously nowhere near the top two who were on the way with it at one stage, but he got right back into it that week. And I think that ability just to clip the ball so nicely from 30 or 40 yards from the green is going to be a huge advantage for him this week. And as the course firms up, I think it'll be even more of an advantage. He'll be able to hit the ball and get it to stop beside the pin. His credentials are obviously, he's obviously one of the best golfers in the world this last number of years, and he has a major win this year, and it just wouldn't surprise me if he lands a second one now. He missed the cut in Scotland last week, which doesn't really worry me. Morikawa finished 71st, I think, in the Scottish Open, right back at the end of the field last year before going on to win at St George's. The fact that he played it is an advantage, I think. Anyway, I think you do need to. It is an advantage to have him played the Scottish. He obviously went to Ireland. Good preparation in Ireland. Played Tralee, which Stuart Sink done actually. Whenever before he went and won the Open, he obviously had a lesson with Tiger on Sunday night, walking around the old course with Tiger. Yeah, I think he did the same at Augusta. Tried to glean as much as he could off Tiger at Augusta. He obviously had a bad first round, but it paid off the final 3 rounds. What he gleaned off Tiger, I'm sure, on Sunday night will stand him in good stead too. The only, as I mentioned in my preview, I pointed out at the start of the PGA that he had drifted to 25 during the first round, and I thought that was a big enough number. And he was 25 in the machine when I tipped him up yesterday as well. And I just think for someone of his quality, and for someone who possesses those skills around the greens, and someone who's already won a major this year, I think it's fair enough, and I think it's worth backing. It's more the price about Justin Thomas this week that has tempted me than anything else.
Yeah, would recommend to anybody who doesn't to check out Ben Coley's player-by-player guide over on Sporting Life. An amazing feat of work, and just reading JT's inputs there from Ben. Interesting to know he's played one round at St Andrews back in 2013 and shot a 66, kind of in the early stages of his career. And even though he's had some pretty poor Open Championship form, he's normally tailed off. He's had good rounds in 2016, 17, 18, and 19. So it's not been all bad for JT on links. And as you say, some evidence there that maybe St Andrews is where it'll all come together for him in this event. The third selection, boo! It's a live golf player, and I've been kind of stunned to see the numbers of some of the live players this weekend. It's bizarre. It's almost like it's a PR stunt by the PGA Tour just to lay the pants off them to try and get into massive numbers so that they look like also rounds. But DJ is the one you've gone for. Is your third selection, 1.5 points each way for DJ at 33 to 1, taking the 12 places that was on offer with Paddy Power. That's now gone, but the best price you're getting is 40 to 1 with just 5 places, or you can get 35 to 1 with 10 places at Betfred. DJ went well here, didn't he, in 2015, and you think he can replicate that here?
Yeah, I backed him back in 2015 when he led after 2 rounds. I think I backed him at more or less half the price than what he is this week. But yeah, he's a decent Open Championship record as well. 4 top 10s. The most recent of them was last year at St George's. I think he has a great game for St Andrews. Just absolutely bombs away, and he's got a good wedge game. And he's talking a good wedge game too. He's saying that his wedges are a lot much improved. And that, to be fair, that bore out in the PGA Championship where he missed a cut. His approach play was absolutely off the charts for those first couple of rounds. Obviously, he wasn't around for the weekend. And his long game again was in great nick at the US Open too, only to be let down by, a poor putter once again. His putting has been an issue actually this year. It's held him back. Obviously, we know that now that he's banned from the PGA Tour, but he's playing live golf now, and 2 decent results there, 8th and 3rd. As we know, them fields aren't horrendous. They're strong enough towards the top of the market anyway. But a lot of them are out of form, as you say, and a lot of them have drifted to big prices. But if anyone's going to overcome that, it could be Dustin Johnson. He's got the mindset. He really, he strolls around that he doesn't have a care in the world. And I thought it was interesting actually that he played it, a bit of practice with McIlroy as well at St Andrews earlier on in the week. And maybe McIlroy's trying to glean some information and try and smooth out relations or whatever. McIlroy has eased somewhat on some of the things he's been saying about live golf, but I definitely think that he's a massive danger this week. As I said, he led it halfway, but then in 2015, but the weather that came in over there in the last couple of days was absolutely horrendous. Didn't suit him at all. I think his Open Championship, his Augusta record is obviously superb, which is what I think's a massive pointer this week. He won the November edition. He's got a runner-up in April as well. And there's 33 to 1, 40 to 1 out there. It's definitely worth chancing. I think Dustin Johnson, his form earlier on, he was getting married early on in the year as well. His poor form might have had something to do with that, but he's actually got some eye-catching form. When you look at it, he obviously made the semis of the match play. 24th in the US Open, 12th in the Masters too, 9th at Sawgrass. So he's got some decent form this year, and his golf recently, even in Portland there, finished 3rd. There's really no negatives, and I think if he had turned up here with a 3rd place finish, either at the Travellers or maybe the Scottish, we could be talking a lot of a shorter price here, around the 25 to 1 mark. So 33s, 40s, definitely worth taking with the place terms available.
Dustin Johnson there, the 3rd on the list. We've had 3 Americans so far, and we're going to make it 4. But this is a lively outsider, as good a 3-figure poke as you're going to get, Niall, according to your column. Not a player that I would have found myself backing before reading your column, and now having read that, I'm going to be getting on as soon as we finish the call. Keith Mitchell, 150 to 1, best price. That is with Bet365, but for the fancy places, you can get 125 to 1 with Sky Bet 11 places. Mitchell had a very, very good putting week last weekend, and you've done some digging and found that there are reasons to think he might go well at St Andrews.
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't have the major experience that I really value in backing, obviously a previous close call in a major championship is huge for me. I think when backing golfers to win the following major, obviously Keith Mitchell doesn't have that. But he's missed a cut that there's only 2 open appearances as well. But I think his best finish in a major so far is 34th. But I am massively bullish that he can improve on that this week. A resident of Sea Island as well, where he grew up playing college golf, used to playing golf on the coast and in the wind, and that translated to a win at PGA National, which is always a tough golf course to play, and always. Wind always plays a factor there, and you can see that in the roll call of winners. Just this century, you've got Leonard, Justin Leonard, Todd Hamilton, Padraig Harrington, Ernie Els, and Rory McIlroy, who have won the Honda and won the Open Championship. And you look back at runners-up: Parnevik, Kuchar, Scott, and Fowler, all guys who have played well in Open Championships as well. Keith Mitchell has won there, so I think it's always important to look at the roll call of winners and contenders at the Honda Open when you're looking at an Open Championship. Played great golf recently, 7th in Canada, 6th at the Travellers, top 20 at the Memorial as well. Went to Scotland last week and finished with a final round of 66 to finish 36th as well, which is a very decent result. There's another who's putting extremely well, and I do think the putter's important this week. It's one club that's hard to predict, as we always mention, and someone who's even putting poorly can easily go on to have a good week. But those who are putting well in the run up to St Andrews, I'm actually quite bullish about, and he's putting great, putted very well at Scotland as well. You mentioned Ben Coley's player guide. I actually hadn't noticed. I didn't know this, but he pointed out a very interesting fact that his father's actually a member of the Royal Ancient, and his sister went to school there at St Andrews as well. So he's got ties there, and he's looking forward to playing the Open at St Andrews. I think, as I say, he's probably the liveliest outsider for me at triple figures.
Interesting. Keith Mitchell there, 150 to 1. The liveliest outsider there for Niall, and 11 places with Skybet, 1.25 points each way. So that will send, if you're following Niall's taking plan and Keith Mitchell goes and does, I was going to say does a Ben Curtis, but that might be a bit disrespectful to Keith. But goes.
You look at it, even Data Golf have got him 31st in the world. That's their ranking of him anyway. I think he just ranks outside the top 50 in the world. But Data Golf have even got him ranked, just outside the top 30. I think he's playing unbelievable golf at the minute, and obviously 2 top 10s in the PGA Tour, followed by a positive result in Scotland, with positives on the greens as well, and a final round of 66. There's a lot going for him to be sitting there at 125 to 1.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 more selections for Niall. We've had 4 Americans to start the column, but you're ticking off 3 other continents with the next 3, starting with a green jacket owner in Hideki Matsuyama, who you put up 40 to 1 with 12 places. I have a feeling that might have gone since it went live, but you can still get 45 to 1. You can get 50 to 1 5 places. You can get 45 to 1 8 places, that's probably the best way to go. But Hideki, obviously the Augusta form line is something you're keen to get with.
Yeah, absolutely. And just some of the things that he's done recently, it's very hard to ignore and to leave him off your staking plan, given the danger he possesses when performing like this. Obviously, he missed a cut at the Open, or not at the Open, the Scottish Open, but he was on the wrong side of the draw. There's one side of the draw there that experienced, almost a 3-shot deficit over those couple of days. The wind blew very hard in the afternoon session of the first day. And then the course setup bizarrely changed from rounds 1 to 2 as well, which is a disgrace, really. So the missed cut last week at the Scottish Open doesn't bother me in the slightest. I'd rather look to his 4th place at the US Open, where he finished 2nd on approach. 2 starts previous at the Bayern Nelson, when he finished 3rd, he topped the approach stats there that week. it's some of the best approach play in his career, basically, and the upside, the backing him when he's playing that can be absolutely huge. Obviously, I've mentioned the Augusta correlations as well, which he really has. He's played well in Opens too, 2 top 5s in Open Championships before, and some may forget that he's actually won twice on the PGA Tour this season as well, which is easily forgotten about because his last one came, in Hawaii near the start of the year. But 2 wins in the PGA Tour, turning up here between 40 and 50 to 1, given his, that he finished 4th in the US Open. I hold a lot of emphasis on the last major performance, and a top 5 there is huge. It's not one you'd automatically look to thinking he'd play great around St Andrews, but his approach play is just that good that when he's got those wedge shots from 125 and 150 yards, he's as dangerous as anyone else in the field. So if he can manage to hold a few putts, I think he could be a big contender.
Hideki Matsuyama there, 40 to 1 for Hideki to justify that. Hope for someone who's been burnt by Hideki backing before. Hope for a good putting week. But certainly, as you say, approach play better than anybody's. 2 more. Seamus Power is next up. You're an Irish compatriot of yours, Seamus, having a fantastic season. You put him up at 100 to 1 with 12 places. His price currently is a bit shorter than that. He's 100 to 1 with 5 places, but 90 to 1, 8 places, seemingly the best way to go for Shane. It's been a bit of money for him steadily over the last kind of 12 hours, for 24 hours or so. Why do you think Shane? I mean, obviously you've got to have one, British or Irish player in the staking plan. What was it about Seamus that makes you think that he's the one who could go well this weekend?
Well, you do have the likes of Hatton and Fleetwood, who are
so short, aren't they?
Almost a third. They're about a third of the price that Seamus Power is, and arguably Seamus Power has played better golf all year long, and consistently as well. Obviously, he got his win last year in this exact week, actually. Last year by winning the Barbasol, which ran alongside the Open. So. Or was it the week before? I can't really remember. But it's the same time of year anyway. But he's played remarkably consistent golf this year, and for someone, it's just an unbelievable rise in the quality of golf. I think he was around 500th in the world this time a year ago, and now he's in the top. I think he's just outside the top 30 in the world. But his golf recently has been tremendous, and there's one big, he had 2 top 5 finishes, early on in the season, but 4th the RSM and 3rd in Hawaii at Sony, which is of course by the coast. But he's not an Irish player you would normally associate with links golfer or anything, because he's been a college US golfer and slightly different background to the likes of McIlroy and Shane Lowry, but his major golf this season has been tremendous. 27th at the Masters, 9th at the PGA, and then 12th at the US Open. That's really solid form coming into an Open Championship, and there's a big negative against debutants here in the Open Championship. Not many of them do it. Morikawa did, but not many of them get over the line being a debutant, and you obviously wouldn't expect Power to get over the line at 100 to 1, but nevertheless I do think he's worth backing. One of the most consistent performances across the year and in the majors, and he's overcome the debutant negatives in the previous majors, especially at Augusta as well, finishing top 30. So there's no reason why he can't overcome it here, and he hits the ball a long way. There's no negatives in his game. He's a great all-rounder, very good putter as well, which I think is important this week. So I just think Seamus Power could go very well. Emulate what Paul Dunn did. Obviously, he was an amateur when he joint led the Open here at St Andrews in 2015 before going into the final day. I think Seamus Power would have a bit more class if he got into the same position, and he's riding the crest of a wave, and I just really wouldn't rule him out. He's not that young of a golfer either. He's 35 years of age, and you look at that, that's the kind of age you're looking to. Mid 30s towards 40 years of age, you do really well. in Open Championships down the years. So yeah, at around 100 to 1, I thought he was worth backing.
Seamus Power, 0.75 of a point each way, the penultimate selection. And finally, Christian Bizaden, you've got him at 100 to 1 each way. That price is still knocking around 125 to 1 best price with 365 8 places, 100 to 1 9 places on offer as well, or even 100 to 1 10 places with Betfred. Player again who's coming into this, a good putter who comes into this in decent form.
Yeah, exactly, and he's long since been talked about as a golfer who could potentially win a major, but he's not on many radars this week going into St Andrews, but he is on mine. I think if the more strategy comes into it across the week, the more of a chance that Bizaden will have, and I think that's why I want to have him included. If the course gets really fiery and strategy off the tee and position becomes slightly more important than what we think it might at this stage, then I think the South African might have a fair chance. He's a really classy golfer. He's obviously got a win at Leopard Creek, which is a tough golf course in South Africa. Also has the win at Valderrama as well, where strategy is paramount importance going around Valderrama. 2 top 5s at Wentworth as well in the BMW PGA shows that he can mix it with the best fields. Plus, again, it's that element of strategy around Wentworth, keeping the ball in play. Obviously, you have to miss the pop bunkers off the tee and all this week. He has a runner-up in guitar. Guitar has always been a huge pointer towards Open Championship form. Again, he lacks the kind of major experience that I would like, and as with some of the others towards the top of the market that have backed. But nevertheless, I think what he's done recently, finishing second in the John Deere PGA Tour event, 16th in the Scottish Open, closed with a 66, just like Keith Mitchell as well, with the second best round of the day. It was only battered by Jason Scrivener on Sunday. He's got a lot of positives heading in here, and I think he's another, as you say, with good putting form, playing well with a putter, and I think he's another one worth playing at triple figures. As I say, I'm hoping with Bizaden out that strategy comes into it a shade more than what we're talking about at the minute. But that it could be the play whenever the course fires up, that even the wizards from around 50 or 60 yards are struggling to keep the ball near the hole, and someone who doesn't possess the length off the tee, which is Bizaden height, and he'll be left with slightly longer wedges into the green, but he maybe has a bit more height on his ball. It could just play out that way, and that's why I want to have him on the staking plan.
Christian Bizaden, the final one, I'd say 125 to 1 8 places, 100 to 1 10 places with Betfred, the final selection for Niall. So just to run through them quickly, and you can find these on the app, as I say. Zander Schoffler, the 3 point each way headline selection. Justin Thomas next up, 2 points each way. Dustin Johnson, 1.5 points each way. Keith Mitchell, the big price triple figure selection at 1.25 points each way. Hideki Matsuyama, 40 to 1, 1.25 points each way. Seamus Power and Christian Bizaden, both 3/4 of a point each way as well. We'll quickly go through some of those at the top end of the market that people will want to hear your thoughts on. You mentioned Rory McIlroy there a second ago. He will be very popular coming into this. He's certainly playing, or has played, some of the best golf we've seen from him in recent years over the last couple of months. How do you think this test will suit him or not?
He's certainly happier than I've ever seen him. And I pointed out at the start of the year, and I think the whole bunker shot at the last at Augusta was a turning point in terms of lifting a bit of pressure and weight off his shoulders, and that's bore out. I think he went on to finish 5th or 8th at the PGA and 5th at the US Open, and he's spurring chances there at those 2 majors, to be fair, and he won't be happy about that, and he'll be looking to put it right at St Andrews. Obviously shot 63 here back in 2015 before being blown away. I think he shot 80 in the second round. He obviously has great credentials around a course like this, but it's mainly the price that put me off betting him this week. Around 11, 12 to 1 mark just doesn't quite interest me, given the chances that he has spurned this year. And he does come in with winning form, having won the Canadian 2 or 3 starts ago. So I do think on paper he has everything going, but it's simply the price that put me off, and that's why I wouldn't be backing him.
Rory McIlroy, a little bit too short there for Niall in the market, but next up, 2 players whose links form is as good as anybody's in the world. Jon Rahm and Jordan Spieth, both 18-1.
Yeah, and every chance that either could go well this week. I'll start with Jon Rahm. I think given his links form, and you're talking like you're looking towards 20-1, you got 20-1 in the exchange or so, it's certainly tempting, and you could look silly at the end of the week for not getting involved with it, but I'd err on the side of being confident enough that he's not going to win. He doesn't just look quite in the right headspace this year. He's done a lot of complaining, and obviously we know Rahm's done that down the years, but when he won his US Open and all last year, it seemed that he had overcome a lot of those hurdles, but this year he's been very moany, and we even seen him back at in the desert in California at the American Express complaining about the setup there, of course, our courses that he has won on, an event that he won, and he's complaining about the easy setup and blah blah. He just hasn't looked a happy camper all year, and doesn't come in with the approach play mainly that I would want him to be performing well on. At the start of the year he was playing off the charts with his irons, and that's just not the case anymore. He was struggling with his putter earlier on in the year, and he has sorted that out, putting a lot better in recent months, but his iron play just isn't up to scratch where I'd be looking to back him. And then couple that with his mental state of mind, just doesn't look like he's worth a bet this week. Spieth, on the other hand, has every chance. I think I looked back some records. I think he was around a 13-2 shot in this in 2015, believe it or not, which is incredible. Turns up at 3 times that price this week almost. Played well in Scotland, obviously. He's just not quite hitting the heights on all parts of his game that I'd be looking when looking for a major winner. Neither department, putting, approach play, is off the charts at the minute, and I'm looking for someone who's really excelling in some of those departments when looking for a potential major winner, and Spieth just doesn't quite hit them heights for me. Now, we've seen him win the Heritage earlier on in the year with with a bad putter, you know what I mean, which is he can overcome these easily. He could even putt poorly this week and still win, because that's the likes of Jordan Spieth. But neither department, especially his approach play, is just quite good enough for me at the minute, where I'm looking to back around that market. Far rather back the likes of Schauffele around the same price, who's playing off the charts in almost every department. I'd rather give him a run than the likes of Spieth, but he'll have plenty of supporters this week, and if none of my guys are around on Sunday, then I'll be cheering him on. But then you look at last year, and I know you were there and you followed him at St George's last year in the final round. Him and Morikawa going head to head. That's another thing. It was really favourable conditions that week as well. Sunny, warm, especially in the final day that day. The same presents itself this week, and I do think the Americans will be a force to reckon with. I think when the weather is good and there's little wind, it'll really suit the Americans, and that's why, as you said, I've gone with 4 Americans in mistaken plan, and if any other Americans were going to win it, I think Spieth would be almost top of the list.
Yeah, on to 2 other major winners. Well, 2 major winners this year. Matt Fitzpatrick, US Open champion 20-1, and Scotty Scheffler, world number 1, and Masters champion as well. I'd have been pretty surprised, given what Scheffler's done. Let's start with Scheffler, what he's done this season, and given we've spoken about Augusta form and St Andrews form, and there's been, I guess, a bit of a dip in form, but to see him going off the number he is will surprise a few, I'd have thought.
Yeah, I agree with you. And of everyone towards the top of the market, he was the one who I wrestled with most in terms of not backing. As you say, around that mark, I think he's around 20 on the machine, and probably around 16-1 out there. He was the one I wrestled with the most. As you say, the Augusta form's a big pointer, but the thing that put me off slightly was just that his approach play and his off the tee game his performances have decreased slightly in the last couple of weeks, and that was just enough to put me off. He's not quite hitting the same heights as he was whenever he won the Arnold Palmer and the match play and the Masters. Now, obviously, he's turned up second at Colonial, which is, you would think maybe not a course that suited him, so it gives his versatility on all the courses is a huge advantage. He turns up at the US Open and really spurned a chance there at the US Open. He got into the lead early on Saturday, and it looked like at one stage he was going to ramp away with it. I think he had a 2 or 3 shot lead at one stage when he had to come back to the field. So a missed opportunity there. And since at the Travellers, 13th Travellers, missed cut last week, doesn't overly worry me. But then again, he wasn't playing great. Doesn't inspire you with confidence. But just his level has slightly dropped, I think. And that was the only reason. Slightly dropped from when he was winning the Masters and stuff earlier on in the year. That's the only reason that slightly put me off. But his game, I think, will suit St Andrews, especially off the tee. And I think he'll be absolutely bombs away, and he'll try and attack every hole. And if he has a hot putter on the week, or has a really good short game on or around the greens, then he'll be a big factor. There's no doubt about that. The question marks probably surround his short game more than anything else. From 70 yards and in, if he performs well in that department, he'll be right up there. And Fitzpatrick, on the other hand, looks a bit short to me in the market. He possesses everything you need around here too. Obviously off the tee, he's a colossus these days. 5 years ago, if you were talking about Fitzpatrick winning an Open at St Andrews, you would be laughing. You'd be looking to the other venues like Birkdale for Fitzpatrick, but now he probably holds a fair chance around St Andrews. How far he hits the ball, and he comes in with great form. Obviously, won the US Open and then 6th last week in Scotland. Played very well, performing well throughout the bag as well. But again, not quite hitting the heights in those departments than the likes of Schauffele. That's why my argument that Schauffele around 16-1 his value is, I stick by it simply because of how better he's performing than everyone else around him in the market. On approach play, around the greens and putting. He's the best golfer in the world the last couple of weeks in those departments. So I think the 16-1's value for him, whilst everyone else around this mark, especially at St Andrews, where you're looking towards 20 under, I think it may be prudent to play Zander Schoffler and then a right number from further on down the field around the 33-1, 40-1 mark that potentially have a big upside.
Shane Lowry won the event in very different conditions at Portrush. Went very, very well at Augusta as well after you put him up this year too. He's 25-1, and Patrick Cantlay 28-1 after a decent showing in Scotland.
Yeah, Cantlay I can't have simply because of his major form and continues to let everybody down, including me, when they get on. So if he wins, so be it. I'm not backing him again.
Yeah.
And in similar fashion, Larry can win the Open at around 25-1 for all he wants as well, but I won't be on. He does have the credentials around here, to be fair. His game around the greens. When we arrived at Portrush, the slopes and everything around the greens spelt everything towards Larry winning that Open Championship. It was a clue that I actually missed, but looking back on it, I regret that. And around St Andrews, it's the same thing. The slopes around the greens and all, it will suit Larry, and he's playing well too. But the putter has tailed off slightly in the last month or so, which is a bit of a worry because he was putting very well all year, and Larry relies on that putter. You know what I mean? When he starts missing putts from inside 10 feet, and so he doesn't particularly score well, and he missed a cut at the US Open, which isn't a big positive heading in here as well. Finished 9th in the Irish Open, which is a fair enough result. Skipped Scotland, but has all the credentials, as I say, but just the price more than anything puts you off.
And we get to finish this run through by talking about 3 players that I've backed. So you can now, that's handy, isn't it? 3 players here. Cameron Smith being the first, who at the Genesis in the Scottish Open last weekend. Finished tied 10th, but had a 75 on the Friday, but a 67 and a 67. 68 and a 68 either side of that, and then a 67 on the Sunday as well, and had his best Open Championship performance thus far last year, where he was kind of in touch going into Sunday and then dropped away on Sunday as well. My thinking there being, I'll justify my selections before you pick them apart. My thinking being that Smith, especially with they like to be pretty fiery and pretty dry, it should suit the the Australian conditions that he had grown up in. Was Zalatoris 30-1, obviously withdrew last year at St George's after a very good opening round, but one of the worst putts we've ever seen in major tournament history. But he seems to have sorted his putting out in majors, and I think he's having gone back to the kind of number we saw him be for the PGA and the Masters. He just seems like a guy who turns it on at these kind of events. And you mentioned there, Scheffler being able to attack the course. I think Zalatoris will have a similar opportunity to kind of bomb his way off the tee and then try and put himself as close as possible. And then Morikawa seems to me to have drifted to a massive number. He missed the cut at the Scottish Open, but was on the wrong side of the draw. He was the best player in the field for 3 days by a stretch, really, at the US Open as well, to suggest that his golf is kind of going back in the right direction. And you mentioned that the conditions could be pretty similar to as they were last on Sunday at the Open Championship last year. So for him to be kind of 30-1 with all the places defending his title looks pretty fair to me.
Yeah, start with Morikawa there. He was another one I wrestled with, to be fair, just because of the price, and I was kicking myself that I wasn't on at the same price when he turned up at the US Open and played that well. And I was kicking myself after a couple of days there, thinking this man's going to win this at 28-1, and it'll be Bruce Koepka all over again, that we missed out on the big price whenever he wins a major. But there's not many negatives around him. He actually putted quite well in Scotland last week whenever he missed a cut, which is a good sign for him, and putted well, of course, at the US Open too. When I looked at St Andrews, and obviously I consider Augusta a big pointer, of which Morikawa was obviously finished 5th there this year, which is his first big effort there. But he doesn't quite strike me as the winner of St Andrews Open. So he's not the big hitter. Now, he overcomes that on plenty of courses, his versatility, and his approach play is just that potent that he can overcome those things. But he just doesn't strike me as that swashbuckling, attacking golfer that wins around St Andrews. And that was basically the only thing that kept him off the staking plan for me, because he's at the right price and he's certainly interesting anyway. So you'd certainly be excited about putting them around that mark anyway. You certainly wouldn't put anybody off getting involved around the 28-1 mark. It could really look silly after winning the Open of St George's last year that he turns up at the Open. When he won the Open last year at St George's, if someone told you he turns up 28-1 for the next one, or the US Open for that matter, which I didn't back him there either. You are running a tightrope if you don't back him at that price in a major. So fair play to you for backing him, and yeah, it could pay off easily. Zalatoris, the only reason why I didn't include him was because I thought that his talents best lie on a tougher golf course than St Andrews. Yeah. And yes, he has the length, and yes, he puts well enough in majors to be a factor here, but I can just see him winning a major around, the likes of Torrey Pines or a long, tough US major layout. I think is more than likely going to be his first major victory, and for that reason alone, I was happy enough just to leave him off the staking plan. But again, it's a danger. Someone like him with a major record he's got, I'm running on the tightrope again, leaving him off the staking plan. So you've certainly got two lively runners there with their major record that you can certainly be excited about punting around that mark. Cameron Smith was quite an easy one for me to leave off the list this week, simply because his huge plus is his approach play. Well, one of his, obviously he's got a great putter. He's a great putter on his day as well. But let me down a couple of majors ago. But his approach play has definitely tailed off this last couple of weeks. He obviously missed a cut at the US Open, which wasn't a good sign. Now, whether that their venue suited him or not, it probably didn't, because he is a bit wild off the tee, and you end up in trouble around Brookline. It's tough to hit the greens, and you're going to be under pressure from the pump. But 10th in the Scottish last week is a decent sign, but he was 68th on approach, which I couldn't believe. Now, that might be a positive, simply because he's got so much to improve on from one week to the next. But he ranked near last in the field of those who made the cut on approach play, which was a surprise to me. And that's going to be a huge part of the task this week. How you perform from 70 yards and in, which he is usually a wizard at, to be fair. But the last couple of efforts at the US Open and the Scottish is the only thing that slightly worries me. And I think the form that he was showing earlier on in the year, when he won, obviously when he won Hawaii, and then won in Sawgrass, and then contended for a long way at the Masters, and then looked a lively contender for every major after that. I just don't think he's in the quite in the same vein of form than what he was earlier on the season. So given that he's hovered around the same price ever since after the Masters, which he didn't win, just quite easy to leave off the list this week. I just don't think he's in the same form than what he was earlier on in the year, and that's a gamble that'll take on. But your previous two, I'd be very worried about leaving them off the list, and if either of the two of them win, I know I'll be kicking myself on Sunday.
I won't be. I'll be over the moon. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I looked into this, and for Smith, he obviously had a horror show on the Friday. He lost 2.16 strokes on the field in approach play and 2.4 around the greens, which for him is absolutely ridiculous. And he kind of trended back in the right direction. And on the Sunday, Smith picked up a 0.91 shots on approach and 0.1 and 1.06 around the green. So hopefully kind of that trend continues, because you have to think if he posts those kind of numbers over the weekend, then he should be there or thereabouts. Fingers crossed. We'll see. Before I let you go, Niall, to melt here in London, we'll just go through the 3 questions that we were asked from Joe Lyons. Interesting, 2 of them with the same surnames of you. You got a couple of fans, I think, in the family. How much will Schauffele's finish at Carnoustie in 2018 come into play this year, especially off the back of last week's result?
I obviously backed him back in 2018 there at Carnoustie, but I think I could actually see him winning an Open Championship around a slightly more strategic golf course than what St Andrews is, and I would have imagined that. He's won around a lot of strategic golf courses in his career. Eastlake, for example, being one, plays very well there. But I think more than anything else, it's just going to be bombs away this week, and I don't think it is. Obviously, having previous Open form's an advantage, but Carnoustie's a totally different task than what St Andrews is, and Schauffele's recent form trumps everything else, I think, and I think that's why that I'm quite confident that he'll be in the mix at the weekend, just simply because all departments of his game are off the charts. So it's his long ball off the tee, hits the ball a mile, and everything else in his game's in fine working order. But yeah, it's certainly no negative, obviously, to have the form around Carnoustie, but it's a totally different golf course, and not something that you would look to for any data points,
And then next up, a more general question about the course itself from Andrew Smith. Well, Niall, so he doesn't want to hear what I've got to say. Is there a chance that the course could become obsolete due to the driving distance of the top modern players? Does that now rule out the shorter guys completely?
Well, at St Andrews, usually, yes, there's a huge element of that, but this week might be a fair bit different, simply because of the baking weather we're going to get, and have been getting for the last week or so. That the course is going to really dry out. It's already brown, and the fairways are more brown than green. Who knows what way the greens are going to go. So certainly a more strategic golfer could come into this mix. You're going to get a lot of run on the golf ball, and it'll be harder to stop the golf ball on the green. So those coming in from slightly longer distance, maybe, obviously there's going to be a lot of wedges around St Andrews, there always is, but with a high ball flight, being able to stop the ball near the pin before it runs off the slopes could be an advantage. So yeah, there's certainly, the course is certainly not obsolete, and it'll always be here, and it'll always hold Open Championships, and it's always an interesting affair. I kind of like that it's an Open Championship venue where, the likes of John Daly have won and Tiger has won, and the big hitters have taken it apart. We obviously seen Zach won in 2015, but that was mainly because of the weather. It played havoc that week. But I quite like a bombs away Open Championship. Every other Open Championship's different, so this certainly stands out on its own. But I do think as the week continues, we could see strategy come into it a fair bit more, and placing the ball off the tee in order to get an approach shot where you can actually hold the green. It'll be interesting to see just how fiery the course becomes, and whether the shorter hitters come right back into the fray.
Yeah, certainly. When you look at the 2015, when you've got Zach Johnson winning it, you got Spieth back then. Certainly wasn't amongst the bigger hitters. It does feel like a course where, if the conditions are right, those type of players can get into it. Finally, we've got Lawrence Lyons saying, "Give me not even no, please, no, thank you. Give me a 300-1 shot. You can finish in the top 20." Lawrence says.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, I'm going to give him a Lawrence as well. Thurston Lawrence. Like I think he's a lively runner around. He's anything from 300 to 400-1 out there for him, and maybe one that I would look to in the top 20 market, maybe top South African as well. Comes in really good form. Actually, third in the Irish a couple of weeks ago, 24th in the Scottish. Obviously, he got his win early on, it was late last year. It was this season in the Joburg. He's played great golf all season. Plenty of top 10s in Kenya, South Africa ever since. Obviously, his third place in the Irish, as I mentioned. Playing good golf and putting very well. His approach play was superb last week in Scotland as well. Has played at Dunhill Links and shot 66 here at St Andrews, and has also won a Lytham Trophy as well. So a good amateur career around the links here. So without doubt, Thurston Lawrence looks someone around the 300-1 mark, 400-1 who could make the top 20 for sure.
Richard Bland for me, if you're interested. He's 350-1. He's finished. What is he finished in the Dunhill? He's finished tied fourth in 2021, second in 2020. We know that in the last couple of years at his best, he's been able to mix it with the big boys, and he certainly knows the course pretty well. And he shot a 64 at St Andrews as well in the Dunhill links as well. So it's always, I find the Open Championship so difficult, because normally when it's the Masters or whatever, the US Open, you can look through those kind of 3-figure prices and draw lines through most of them. Whereas I feel like in the Open, you could find yourself suddenly backing off the field.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd like Blandy to go well. But maybe he'll just, when we're talking about how this could be one for the Bombers, that's certainly not something that he possesses in his arsenal.
No, but as you say, he has mixed up with the best in the last couple of years, and certainly a lively runner there, as you say, with his form at the Dunhill Links. But there's plenty of guys, from 100-1 to 300-1, you can back with 10, 11, 12 places out there. It's a great week for the punter. I obviously went with 7 selections, but I think if there's any week where you're going to go with 7 selections, it can be this week where the place term's available. And yeah, there's loads of lively runners, and I'll probably run to the shops myself and try and get as many extra bets on as I can. I'll probably back plenty more as well to try and land the placers and try and get their money back if it doesn't go our way with the shorter price runners. But I just hope you get to see it at the weekend.
Yeah, me too. I'm on holiday with the in-laws, so it'll be interesting. And they are not golf fans, so it'll be interesting to see how much of it I can manage to watch. I'll be on my phone even more than normal, I think, but we'll see. Cheers, Niall. Have a great weekend. Fingers crossed for your selections. Thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us. Before we go, we're going to point you in the direction of the oddschecker app for the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms and Niall's tips every weekend ahead of major golf, ahead of PGA Tour events and some DP Tour events as well. Do subscribe to the oddschecker YouTube channel to find all of our preview content across sports and feature content up there as well. Fingers crossed for another brilliant major. It always makes me sad these days that we have to wait 9 months after the Open Championship for Augusta, but let's hope it's a really brilliant weekend, and certainly some value put forward there from Niall, and hopefully the winner in amongst those 7 as well. As is always the case, please ensure that you're gambling responsibly and enjoy the golf.